Okay, if you're an analyst modeling global risk, there's one tiny spot on the map that should always be on your dashboard. Today, we're doing a full stress test on the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to break down what a blockage, even a partial one, would really mean for the global financial markets.
So let's just start with the number that says it all, 20%. Think about that. 1/5 of the entire planet's daily oil supply gets squeezed through this one single waterway. That statistic right there is why this narrow channel is one of the most critical and most volatile points on Earth.
So how does a little bit of regional tension suddenly become a massive global economic crisis? Well, we're going to trace that exact domino effect. First, we'll define the choke point itself. Then we'll look at what could trigger a supply shock. After that, we'll follow the economic cascade as it ripples through the markets. And finally, we'll game out the geopolitical endgame.
All right, let's start with the basics. Section 1, the global energy choke point. We need to understand exactly why this tiny strip of water is such a massive pillar holding up the global economy. You know, the vulnerability here is all about geography. The Strait of Hormuz is the only sea passage from the energy-rich Persian Gulf to the open ocean, and at its narrowest point, it's just 33 kilometers wide. That leaves almost no room for error, and it creates what strategists call a critical choke point. Basically, a traffic jam waiting to happen, one that's incredibly easy to disrupt. And don't think for a second this is just some regional issue. The risk is global. I mean, look at this list. The biggest industrial engines in Asia, we're talking China, India, Japan, South Korea, plus a huge chunk of Europe, all of them fundamentally depend on safe passage through this strait for their energy security. Any disruption here isn't just a headline, it's felt immediately across their entire economies.
So now that we get the why, let's talk about the how. What could actually shut this thing down? That brings us to Section 2, triggering a supply shock. We're going to examine the potential catalysts that could turn this vulnerable point into a full-blown crisis.
The scary part is how simple and how dangerously fast this can happen. It all starts with a trigger. Maybe a regional conflict boils over. Maybe someone deploys naval mines. Or maybe it's just a sharp escalation in political tensions. The immediate action? Passage is restricted. Tankers stop moving. And the result? A global supply shock that would be priced into the markets in minutes, not days.
And this is the heart of our analysis. Section 3, the economic cascade. This is where we trace the ripple effects from one blocked shipping lane all the way through to the global financial markets. This is where it hits the models.
So, what does this actually look like on your screen? Or in an economic forecast? What are the immediate, real-world financial consequences when a supply shock of this size hits?
Well, the first effects would be instant and they would be dramatic. The first thing you'd see is crude oil prices just going wild, futures contracts probably hitting their daily limits within minutes. But that's just the beginning. That price shock feeds directly into rising global inflation. It means higher fuel and shipping costs for basically every industry. The end result is just massive market disruption and volatility.
And it's so important to get this. This is not just an energy sector problem. The disruption would absolutely not be contained. We would see this uncertainty spread like a virus across equity markets. We'd see a huge flight to safety in government bonds and total chaos in currency exchanges. It's a textbook definition of systemic risk.
But believe it or not, the economic chaos isn't even the final domino to fall. And that brings us to our last section, the geopolitical endgame. This is where we have to assess the potential for military and strategic escalation. The cause and effect here is pretty stark. You block what is, for all intents and purposes, a global economic lifeline, and you're almost certainly going to get a military response. The major world powers, whose economies rely on that freedom of navigation, would be under enormous pressure to intervene. And that just dramatically raises the stakes for a much wider, much more dangerous regional conflict. When you strip away all the complex modeling and analysis, it all boils down to one simple fact. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just a shipping lane. It really is a lifeline for the global economy. And because of that, any disruption, no matter how small or how short, is going to have immediate, severe, and incredibly far-reaching consequences.
So let's end with a very practical question for you. We've just traced the dominoes all the way from one single point in the Persian Gulf to a potential global crisis. So the real question is this: is this kind of high-impact, tail-risk event, this black swan, actually priced into your models? Or is it just a footnote sitting in the appendix?